season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
And here we go.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 53 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. I'm Kyle Sutherland. If you have not already, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube as well as the audio platforms if you prefer that, Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you listen. We are there, and we are continuing, of course, our hardwood edition since we are still in basketball season. And this week, after an all-Central Arkansas pod last week, this week we're going to take it up to Northwest Arkansas, and we're going to be joined first by Farmington Lady Cardinals head coach Brad Johnson. What a run that those girls are on right now. Really, since the 2020 season, they have just been one of the premier 4A programs, and then this year moving up to Class 5A as a two-time defending 4A state champion, have not skipped a beat. One of the best teams in the state overall, possibly the best in the state overall. Definitely deserve plenty of argument for that. Then flipping over to the boys' side, the new number one overall team, at least per our ranking in the high school on SI top 25 that we put out, as well as the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I think just about anywhere that you look, they are number one now, are the Springdale Red Dogs, after Jonesboro fell to Bryant last week. So we're going to talk with Jeremy Price, a Springdale alumnus who actually played in the state championship as a player, took the Red Dogs to the state final in Class 6A a couple of years ago, and they're trying to get there again this year. So again, I want to make sure everybody is reminded to subscribe if you have not already, so that way you are notified when we release an episode. Other than that, we'll get into our conversations. Up first, Farmington girls coach Brad Johnson. All right, we're now joined by Farmington girls coach Brad Johnson. Coach, I know that this year in particular, which we'll obviously get into, has been incredible. Farmington girls basketball for a long time. It's not like it all of a sudden.
Lost you.
Oh, you think about the COVID year. Sorry, for those that are just now tuning in, we've had some technical difficulties throughout the day. But the post-COVID years have been phenomenal. You've been at least to the state final every single year. But just talking about this year in particular, it's been amazing. You guys are once again unbeaten against in-state competition, played a really tough non-conference schedule, and are now in Class 5A. So before we get into the conversation, just kind of talk about what the ride has been like this far with a lot of girls that you've had for quite some time now.
Well, it's been surreal. I think that's one of the words that kind of comes to me a little bit. You know, to sustain the amount of success that our kids have for so long is, you know, it's just not the norm. And I think that just speaks volumes to the commitment of the kids that we have and have had for a long time. The standard, you know, that was set before those kids arrived, and, you know, and just wanting to leave a legacy and pass that thing on to the next group. And, you know, and then I think it also speaks volumes about our community and the way that they support all sports and all things in our school, but certainly women's basketball and the way they promote it. And, you know, and Kyle, the other thing is I've been blessed with a phenomenal staff that they've been with me. You know, Jessica and Denver have been with me for 15 plus years now. And, you know, either one of those could go be a head coach at any moment. They're both head coaches, and they have really bought in and vertically aligned our program and done just a phenomenal job of building up kids and building relationships and, you know, just sustaining success. So it's been really, really special.
So back-to-back 4A state champions. As I said, you've been to the state final at least every year since 2020. So what's that, a 5-year streak now going off 2020? I can't do math. 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And now you move up to 5A this year. And want to focus the last couple of years in particular, because I know that we had talked about at media days how I think back in October, I think 7th grade through 12th grade last year, there was only one loss throughout the entire girls program. And my man Nick Winger put out, Nick Winger Designs, one of the best in the state, one of the best in the country, if you ask me, recently put out some graphics on his page within the last 24 hours. And As of February 10th, 2025, in the last 2 years, the 7th grade through varsity is a combined 191-5. Of course, last year, that one loss was a varsity loss to nationally ranked Duncanville. I think they finished anywhere from number 12 to 15 in the country. Right now, your varsity team has an 82-game win streak against in-state opposition. I mean, you could just continue going on. But I think what's really crazy for me is not crazy, but in a lot of teams that you see like these, you tend to have at least one or two players that might have a little bit of a selfish attitude. It's like, okay, well, I've got to get my points. I don't think I've ever even thought an inkling of that with these teams. And you look at just these clips that you put out on social media, games that I've covered. You talked about your staff. Continuity is so big there and having that. But I think the unselfishness of a talented team like this, and we'll get into some of your players individually in a second, that's the unselfishness has been probably one of the most impressive things about this team.
Well, it is, because it's probably not the norm in maybe today's culture a little bit. I think, it's easy sometimes to just go out and look at great players and think, well, they're going to go out and get theirs. But I think there's things that you can tap into kids. I think obviously, people love to succeed. And, you look at Don Staley had made in one of her press conferences, it talked about sometimes that they sacrifice some of the individual accolades or points, productions on the back of wins and success of the total program. And so, I think we kind of do that. I think, that's a special part of our kids is not only are they willing to sacrifice, whether it's minutes or points or number of shots to get wins, but they celebrate the success of their teammates. They enjoy that ride with them. And I think, they understand that when one scores, we all score. And beyond the point side of things too, it's really developing role identification, because I think it's easy to walk in if you're a really talented player and say, I want to score the basketball. Well, we may need you to be the best defender on the night. We may need you to be a setup kid. We may need you to be a pressure release kid. And so whatever the role is, being willing to just roll up your sleeves and kind of check your ego at the door, which is something we talk a lot about, is check your ego at the door to do more collectively. And so, our kids are all in on that. And we've got a group now that's what they've known. They've cut their teeth on that. We had older kids that came through years ago that really bought into that philosophy. And so, it's something that I'd love to tell you that it's something magically that we've done as a coaching staff, but it's not. That is player driven. It's a standard that's set in our program by them, and they just model it every single day. And man, I love coaching them. It's a lot of fun to do my job and sit in this seat when you're surrounded by an entire group of kids that have a collective vision the way they do.
And just looking at this year's lineup now, you've got Zoe Brashears that is going to Minnesota. Now, she wasn't on the first team that went to state that this group has played, at least in 2022. She might not have been on the Farmington team, but she did get that state championship experience playing for Fort Smith Northside at that time. So you look at her, Marin Adams, Casey McCumber, which Marin and Casey both are going to play at Pitt State. All that state championship experience. Morgan Huer is another one that I know that contributes for you. I think because I cover softball so heavily, she's going to play college softball at Ouachita Baptist. And you've also got a pretty decent freshman as well that people have had their eyes on, and decent as far as I'll just go ahead and say she's pretty phenomenal. I watched her a little bit in travel ball in 7th and 8th grade, knew she was going to be special. Of course, you just look at some of the headlines and you knew that was coming, but that was kind of one thing that I kind of joked about with people last year in a way. Well, they've got all this great talent, but their best player on campus might be in 8th grade. And you look at her this year, and she's just, she's picked right back up what she was doing in the junior high ranks. And not only does that say something doing that as a freshman, but especially moving up in classification. So talk about just some of the individual roles, and also too, the way that this team had, and I know Easton, of course, has Easton McCullough has a strong background at Farmington. You mentioned, one of your coaches, Jessica, her mom, the former Jessica Carter, that played at Mississippi State, won a state championship with Farmington in 2004. So she's obviously very familiar with the program. But just kind of talk about how your players play their individual roles and really the way that they have embraced Easton as a freshman.
Well, first of all, you mentioned right out the gate with strong senior leadership. You look at a kid like Zoe, who's uber talented. She can play multiple spots in those forward positions in the front court. She's a great leader. She's a kid in practice. You're always going to hear her voice. And she just does so many things to impact winning. She's a kid that she can step out and get 20 on any given night. But, you think about the things that she does in her screening actions to free guards up. She's a pick and roll, pick and pop combo kid. She's a tremendous rim protector on the defensive end. And so, she's our career shot blocks leader here at Farmington, and in both career and individual season shot blocks. And so, she's just a force on the board. She's changing shots. She's, in the rebounds she's not getting, she's forcing other people to really have to box her out. And so that kid's been through wars. She understands winning. Her family is, I like to say they're a family of winners. Her two older sisters were great winners as well, and they're both playing collegiately. So she really has done a phenomenal job of just kind of following in that same mold and those footsteps and being a great leader for us every day. Marin Adams is another example of that. At 6 foot and long and lanky guard, she plays multiple spots. Previously to this year, Marin really played off the ball for us. She was kind of a kid that, you'd see her out in transition. She was a slasher. She could get downhill really good off the bounce and used her length really good once she got in the paint. But, the thing that I think a lot of people maybe didn't understand about Marin is she's a natural passer in transition. And so she's ran the point for us probably 65, close to 70% of the time on our possessions this year, and just leading our transition because she really sees the floor well and has a knack for just kind of getting people the basketball, A, when they need it, and B, helping them get open with it. And along with that, scoring. She's played in big games just like Zoe and understands what it takes to win at a high level. Casey McCumber is one of the all-time hardest playing players that I've ever coached. Whatever role that we've given Casey through the course of her career, she just jumps both feet. She was a kid that came off the bench as a sophomore. Last year, she was in and out of the starting lineup kind of based on personnel and what we were trying to do. We were going two bigs or we were trying to get smaller. And she never bats an eye. And there's going to be nights like Greenwood, for example, this past about 3 weeks ago where, she goes out and she gets 26 points and 21 rebounds and really dominates in the post. But, there's also nights where she's going to really defend. A kid that may get out on the floor will use her length, let her be aggressive. She's going to really hammer the glass on both sides. She's going to dive on the floor and try to win every 50-50 ball that she can get close to. Great screener, great teammate, plays with great energy. And again, it's this unselfish mentality of whatever our role needs to be day to day, night to night, we're going to go do it and just try to win. And then, you look at, there's a kid that's in our lineup right now, Gabby McBurnett, and Gabby's started every game for us this year as a senior. She's been kind of a role player coming through her career, and she's taken on that dog mentality role of being our best on-ball defender. Most nights she's going to get the other team's leading scorer, whatever position that is. Tremendous passer, tremendous screener, tremendous effort kid, and really understands how to defend both on the ball and off and being help side defender. And so, again, another kid that's a senior just come in and play a role. Morgan Ewer, you mentioned her earlier. We call her the hired gun around here because, she comes in and she can really shoot it. And she loves that role of coming in the game and being a game changer offensively that can shoot it with great range. And, she shoots at almost a 40% clip right now from the 3-point line. And, she gives us a little different dimension when she comes in the game. And she's another kid that's a gritty defender, can play off the ball and just does a lot of things. And then obviously you mentioned Easton, and, Easton she's an elite level talent. She plays extremely high level of basketball, way above her years. She's very mature. And, I think sometimes it's easy to get enamored with the fact that she is a phenomenal shooter. Phenomenal. I mean, she's shooting almost 50% from the 3-point line, and she'll be I think she's at 97 made threes at this point, 21 games into the season. But it's not at a high volume. She's averaging 20 points a game, and she's not a high volume shooter. She's tremendously efficient. She's really good in pick and roll action. She's really good in transition, sees the floor really well, such a willing passer, and just has a knack for making the right play. And, she's like I said, she grew up in it. Her mother's been on my staff for 16 years, and Jessica was a great player. And, this is all she's known. And so she's literally cut her teeth, being in a gym. And so, you see that with her. And there's, we've got some other kids. We got a group of juniors in Reese Thornton and Josie Dillard that's provided really strong minutes off the bench for us, as well as senior Kate Polly. And, those kids are phenomenal, man. They come in, they play their role, they're aggressive, they defend, and they're all in and winning. And it's a patchwork thing, but the relationships that these kids have built are far bigger than who gets the minutes and who gets the playing time. And I can tell you, our older kids, sometimes when you bring a freshman in and you introduce them to older kids that are good players that have won, you wonder about that transition, but it's not been a transition. They love Easton. They brought her in from the beginning. Honestly, if I hadn't moved her up, I'm not so sure I wouldn't have had a mutiny on my hands. It was, so it was, they've had the anticipation of being able to play alongside her for a long time. And she has too, and I think that's really cool, because she's really looked forward to the day that she could get on the floor with these kids. And so it's been fun watching those relationships develop.
I want to go back to for a second. You mentioned at the beginning there about how the community support and kind of success breeding success. This calendar year has been very good to Farmington. Talking about at the beginning of this year, volleyball girls, I think, went to the semis, made a fairly deep playoff run. Now, this is one that nobody expected, with all due respect, at least outside of Farmington, was football going to the state championship. Look, I love Tommy Tice. I respect that man as much, and I genuinely love Tommy Tice, one of the greatest human beings on the planet. Obviously, a phenomenal football coach. I told you this back in. I did not expect that. I don't even think any poll, regardless of where you looked, had them in the top 10 in Class 5A coming into the season, and then they end up getting state runner-up. Obviously, y'all are on an incredible, historic run with the girls basketball. Johnny's got the boys rolling, even in 5A now. They're doing well. Softball last year, one of the crazier things was when I saw you at the Farmington tournament a week after y'all won state, and Reese and Morgan and these basketball girls, it looked like they had been playing softball for months. Normally, you've got the growing pains. Baseball had a good season. So it's been a really, really great calendar year for the Farmington Cardinals across the board.
It has been, and it's a lot of fun, obviously, right now in our district, just because of the level of success. School runs better, attitudes are good. There's a ton of energy, and there's a lot of crossover athletes. You'll see that. I know sometimes at a school our size there may not be a ton of them, but we do have crossover athletes going kind of back and forth. McCumber and Sadie Morrison, along with 3 or 4 other of our sophomores, all play on that volleyball team that made that state tournament run. We have several kids that will push over into softball. Obviously, Morgan Ewer is one of those. And so on the girls' side, that's been a lot of fun. And then you look on the guys' side of things, and the job Coach Taylor and his staff have done, and the way those kids play, they're just a lot of fun to really watch them prepare and work. The job that Tommy Tice has done in football, listen, he's a statewide treasure.
Yes.
I mean, that guy is he just unifies people. He gets the most out of kids, and he's a guy that's got a very, very good handle on that. Relationships matter. X's and O's are huge. And I know in coaching sometimes we say, Jimmy's and Joe's are better than X's and O's, but I will tell you that relationships and being able to pull the most out of kids and get people to play for you is a huge, huge trait of a phenomenal human being and coach. And Tommy Tice epitomizes that. I mean, that's who he is. And he's got a great staff around him too, Kyle. Like,
yes.
You look at Jay Harper, who's our baseball coach, phenomenal with that stuff as well. And then you look at like Mark Whiteley and Bill Harrelson and all those guys. I could name off our whole football staff, and they're winners. That's what they do. And and on our side of the girls with Kylie Mode and Jason Shirey, there's not a better coach in the state. really at any sport, any level than Jason Shirey. And so we're blessed, man. We're blessed with a great staff. We're blessed with a great community. And most importantly, we're blessed every single day with great kids. And it's a lot of fun to be here in Farmington right now.
So as far as about the past 5 years or so, you split the 2021. Of course, that was just a strange time in COVID when only 1 and 2A got to play. So you split that with Star City. Felt that was a strange year in 2021 with Harrison. You know, they started 15-0, had a little bit of some struggles there for a brief time around district tournaments, and then they played you guys in the state tournament. Obviously, 2022, I know that was a big time. As a fan, that's about as good a basketball game as you're ever. I mean, if you're just got no dog in the fight, that is about as good of a basketball game as far as a finish, even though I know, it stung for one side, was great for the other. Yeah. 2023, you guys won it, got some redemption. I love the redemption. I still to this day love the redemption game from Reese Shirey. You talked about Jason. Reese is one of the most sharp, competitive kids that I have. You talk about multi-sport athletes, but you think about the pedigree with her mom, pedigree with Jason Shirey, just a coaching background family. And I still, to this day, in my publications and my podcast, I typically use redemption instead of revenge because I like that so much, just that story, how that came about. And I say all this to say, and then, of course, you guys beat Morrilton last year to win back-to-back. So it has been really historic especially the last 4 or 5 years for Farmington. The program, as I said at the top, it's always been, especially in the 21st century, Brad Blue did a great job really getting this program built, and then you guys have just taken it to another level. But I want to finish up here talking about, because this is something that a lot of coaches go through. When you got hired, now this was your first head coaching job, right? You'd come as an assistant from Springdale Harbor.
First as a head girls. I actually coached boys basketball.
That's right.
Starting out, but this is my first head coaching job in girls basketball. Yeah.
So there was definitely some questions. Now I remember this a little bit when I wasn't covering sports. I was still in college, but I remember when you got hired, there were some doubters. And look, it's natural human instinct. You hire an assistant coach to replace essentially a legend that had won a state championship, I think went to 3 others, 4 state title games, 1 state championship, close to 500 wins. But you came in, and I'm sure that you heard plenty of the noise, or at least if you didn't see it directly, you definitely heard it. So what were some things that you kind of took into this job, knowing that you not only had massive shoes to fill, but that there was plenty of people that weren't sure you could get the job done?
Well, the number one thing in that is I think as coaches, sometimes you have to be authentic the minute you walk in the door. The thing that helped me the most, Kyle, was the fact that you alluded to Brad Blue. He's I still say he's the architect and the foundation layer for this program, and he always will be. And he's the guy that he got to pick his replacement, right? So when you have that endorsement, that helps. And so he was a guy that, he kind of took on a mentor role for me. He was a guy that if I had frustrations, I could go in and sit down in his office and we could talk about things. And sometimes he would just be a listening ear, but he let me be my authentic self. Yes, you can't go and you don't try to replace a legend. And that was the number one thing that I knew right out the gate is my job is not to replace him. My job is to come in and do the best I can and work as hard as I can for these kids every day, try to build authentic relationships with them, be who I am. And look, don't try to reinvent the wheel. They had done things so well here for so long. We're not going to come in and scrap everything. There's so much that he did was good. And so we were going to continue kind of on that path. And obviously there were some things that I wanted to add in that were just part of my personality, my belief system, and, just try to marry those things together, but just, have a commitment to working really hard. And I'll say this too, for me personally, it was a huge vote of confidence to know that Coach Blue entrusted me with the responsibility of what I consider his baby. And so, nobody was going to put more pressure on me than me to come in and try to get it right. And so, and along the way, the community, again, lifted us up, supported us. Jessica was here. She actually, was from Farmington and spent a year or 2 on Coach Blue's staff and then stayed on with me. And so that eased the transition as well. And then, again, the number one thing was the kids. The kids were hungry. They were driven. They're kids that understood what winning looks like. They knew how you had to work. And so, we just rolled our sleeves up and went to work every day. And it's been a fun ride, but I never tried to make it about me trying to replace anybody. And I never tried to listen, to the outside, because I knew there was going to be questions. There were people that had way better resumes than I did. I'm not oblivious to that. And certainly I was extremely inexperienced on the girls' side of basketball. I spent 3 years with a Hall of Famer in Sandy Wright. So that really helped. And she's, again, to this day, she's still one of my mentors. And so I'd seen how successful people do it. But it was a leap of faith for Blue and for the Farmington school to kind of throw things my way. And I just took it personal, as it was my goal to be everything that they needed me to be here.
As we wrap up here, I want to touch on kind of some of the things that you've really mentioned a lot about how player-led type stuff and how this is really coming from the players, not necessarily coming from the coaches. And you see that a lot where some of the best teams are player-led teams. You see that with championship teams all the time. And I wanted to get into real quick just about, because I think when you've had so much success, and I mean, I'm guilty of this just like anybody. Oh, well, the next year if Farmington doesn't win it, then something's wrong. They got all these people back, or insert the team, insert the sport. I actually had a basketball coach. I won't say who it was, but I'll say it was from one of the smaller classifications that's going to be playing a district tournament. And they were telling me the other day that just a town resident was asking questions about the state tournament and this and that. And we're like, hold on a second. We've still got to get through district tournament. We've still got to get through regional. I think I know the answer to this question, just talking about, again, just knowing the standard that you guys have there, but also just the fact that you've mentioned multiple times how the players really kind of take the lead as far as guiding this team. But is it really just kind of a day-by-day thing that they understand that you can never get complacent, that you guys have a target on your back as much as anybody in the state? Is that just really kind of something that complacency really just doesn't have a place within your program?
Well, I think that's a great way of putting it. We try not to allow anything to be complacent with anything that we do. You and I have talked about this before, and I know this sounds kind of silly, but we never walk in a room at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, or even end of the year and write on a board, we want to win a conference championship or we want to win a state championship. We don't do that. For us, every year is a new story. I start our season in August, and I say our season in August because really that's when it begins for us. But we'll walk in August, and if we have the exact same roster on a new year, that new year is its own story. And so it doesn't matter what you did before. What we've got to do is try to go out and be the best version of ourselves. And quite honestly, we don't just want to be what we were the year before. If we got the entire roster back, or most of them back, we want to try to improve on the product that we put on display every day. And that's in how we practice, how we prepare, how we compete. And so, we just try to look at that. We have a set of standards, and you and I have talked about that before, and those are player standards. We have 3 or 5 of those every year. They set them, and I will tell you that there's one standard that stays on every board every year, and it's block out the noise. And what that means to us is we're never as good as anybody tells us. You're never as bad as the adversity that you're facing. You're somewhere in the middle, and we can't listen to any of that. We've got to worry about what's in our locker room and what we're doing every single day. And so, our job is to go out and be a little bit better. We call it 1%, be 1% better in the way that we practice, and whatever that looks like. Maybe it's tempo, maybe it's defense, whatever our focus is on that day. Maybe it's efficiency with screening. And so, just be a little better every single day. The other thing is we treat every single opponent like it's a championship level event. And I know that's not coach speak. We're going to we have that much respect for everybody we play. And games are played for a reason. They're not won and lost on paper. And so it's won and lost on performance in that moment. And so, we're going to give every opponent their due diligence. We're going to spend the exact same amount of time on film. We're going to try not, at least player-wise, we're going to try not to look too far ahead. As coaches, we're collecting information on what we think potentially could happen down the road. But our job is our film, our scouts, our personnel breakdown, our game planning, and then our practice leading up to those games. We're going to treat it like a championship level event. And if that's we do that on a Tuesday, and then we roll the clock over And Wednesday we're back in and we're getting ready to do that same rotation and routine heading into Friday. And I think we just lock in. We don't talk about anything else. We're not going to talk about, one team when we got another team in front of us. And those practices every day are really, they're also, while we're prepping for opponents, our practices are really about us. And so how good can we be? How good can we execute on both ends? How good can we be in our effort and all those things? And so we just try to drive ourselves. And look, it is, I'd love again to tell you that something that we do coaching wise, we push that out, but our players push that back too. So it challenges us as coaches to expand and to get better with them. We're challenging ourselves and we've got to stay locked in. We're humans just like anybody else, right? So we could veer off the road one way or the other. And so collectively, we just kind of keep everybody between the lines and really focus and try to find new ways to challenge each other. And that's honestly all we do. It's not a magic pill. It's just, and we say this in practice, our kids get tired of me saying it, but it's not that we do different things. We just try to do things differently. And so the level of focus that you have to maintain is not normal. It's not human nature. And can we do it? I'm not going to say that we do it better than anybody else, but can we stay focused longer? Can we grind longer and pay more attention to detail a little bit longer than the norm? And if we can do that, then we feel like wins and losses will take care of themselves.
We've been talking with Farmington girls coach Brad Johnson. Coach, great insight. Love talking about your program. It's truly, it is amazing. I don't think that people understand. Maybe your kids might not even either, because I know when I was an athlete, you're just kind of like, oh, well, we got practice or we got a game. And you don't really know until you actually look back on it. It's like, dang, we really did some good things. So truly just a really fun run that you guys are on, not just this year, really just in recent memory. So excited to watch it all unfold for the rest of the season.
I appreciate you, Kyle. I appreciate you and the job that you do. And obviously having us on, highlighting our program. I love to highlight our kids, but most importantly, man, the job that you do across the board with high school athletics it's second to none. And just keep doing what you're doing, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. Like I've told you, the kids, they just make it too much fun, man. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. So